Good morning. So this morning we'll start a topic that we'll be discussing in the coming days in the satsangs on karma yoga, and specifically based on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the third chapter. So karma yoga is the yoga of action, and it is described and analyzed in a very beautiful way in the Bhagavad Gita. So for those who are new to all of this, just a short introduction. The Bhagavad Gita is considered to be like the Bible of the yogis. It's a short text that was written more than 5,000 years ago, and it contains all the teachings that we need to know to progress on the spiritual path and attain the goal of the spiritual path. And it is in the form of a dialogue between a great teacher, Lord Krishna himself, and Arjuna, his disciple. And Arjuna represents us, the spiritual aspirants who are still ignorant, who are still aspiring for knowledge and for self-realization. So with great compassion, Krishna is giving Arjuna all the secrets of how to conduct our life in the world, and at the same time make our life spiritual, and ultimately attain the goal of life, which is the highest bliss. And because Arjuna is a warrior and there is a big war that is about to start, Arjuna is going through a crisis that is really the topic of the first chapter of the Gita, where Arjuna is in great despair, and he wants to renounce his duty as a warrior. He wants to abandon his duty, and he's also feeling great grief. And so this week we had some talks about grief, yoga for grief, and even a course. But this was exactly the situation with Arjuna, how it all started. This deep grief that he was feeling from fear of death. Not so much for him, but for his relatives and mentors. So he was grieving, and Krishna starts the teaching by telling him why wise people don't grieve, because they know that there is no death, because you are immortal. All of these people that you're grieving for are immortal, because the soul is immortal, because your true identity is not with your physical body, not even with your astral body. So the soul is eternal. And he's also giving him the highest teaching, that we're not many souls, there is one soul. And you are that soul. It is called the Atman. It is of the nature of absolute existence, absolute consciousness, and absolute bliss. So he gives him this teaching in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is called the teachings of Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of wisdom. So, but what Krishna is noticing is that Arjuna is not ready for this yoga. He doesn't have the qualifications. He needs to go through preparation, through some preliminary practices. And this is when Krishna is shifting the teachings in the second chapter, after giving him the highest knowledge of Vedanta, about the immortality of the soul, about the eternal nature of the self. And he's explaining to him the self, the Atman, is infinite, is eternal, is indivisible, does not consist of part, doesn't have a beginning, nor middle, nor end. And it is of the nature of bliss, and it is your nature, O Arjuna. So, but seeing that these teachings are too high, and Arjuna is not able to assimilate them, to digest them, to comprehend them fully, he's making a shift in the second chapter. Verse 47 is saying, sorry, verse 39. So far, I taught you the teachings of Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. Now I'm going to teach you about Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. And he started to teach him how, oh Arjuna, you have to do your duty. Whatever it may be, everyone comes with a duty to this life, to this world. In the case of Arjuna, is to be a warrior, is to fight in a righteous war. And so, oh Arjuna, do your duty. This is the first part of your practice of karma yoga, the yoga of action. But as you perform your duty, you must not be attached to the fruits of your actions. You have to surrender and offer the fruits to God. And if you do this, is telling him, you will purify your heart and your mind and will be ready for the path of knowledge. That is the direct path to moksha or bliss. And this is how, more or less, how the second chapter ends. In the end of the second chapter, he also describes the characteristics of a person who attained that state of highest bliss, how such a person behaves, how they conduct their life. He's doing this to give us inspiration, and to Arjuna, and also to basically show us the way to attain that state. And this is how the second chapter ends. In fact, when you read the last verse of the second chapter, you think that what is left to say? He said it all. He described the way, he described the goal, he described the state that we're going to be in and when we attain the goal. But the reason why we are having the third chapter and about 15 more chapters is that Arjuna had doubts and questions. Luckily for us, because this way we get more elaboration on the teachings. So the third chapter begins with a question from Arjuna, and Arjuna is saying to Krishna, if thou thinks that knowledge is superior to action, O Krishna, why then, O Keshava, dost thou ask me to engage in this terrible action? Good question, no? Oh Krishna, if you think that the path of knowledge is the real path, is the highest path, the Jnana Yoga sadhana that leads to bliss, and we also know that to practice Jnana Yoga, we need to renounce. We need to renounce the world. We need to renounce action. So renunciation or sannyasa is required for the path of knowledge. And the path of knowledge is the only direct way to moksha or bliss, which is our goal as spiritual aspirants, and also Arjuna's goal as a spiritual aspirant. So he's almost offended. He's asking Krishna, why are you telling me to fight in this terrible war? It doesn't fit with your teachings. And so then he continues and says, with this apparently perplexing speech, thou confuses, as it were, my understanding. Therefore, tell me that one way for certain by which I may attain bliss. So he's telling Krishna, not only that, but there is seeming contradiction in your teachings in chapter 2. Because you said yourself that only through knowledge, not through action, can we attain bliss. And you know that we want the highest bliss. Everyone wants the highest bliss. So you said that we have to renounce action and engage in the path of knowledge. So why are you now then in the same second chapter telling me to do karma yoga, to practice the yoga of action? So this is confusing, and it is internally contradictory. But when Arjuna is saying this to Krishna, of course, he's not being disrespectful. This is being explained in the commentary of Adi Shankaracharya, who says Arjuna is not accusing Krishna in being in confusing him or being contradictory, but he's saying with this apparently perplexing speech, apparently meaning it seems to be contradictory, but I know that you're the Supreme Lord. Your words cannot be confusing or contradictory, but my mind is confused. So please, oh Krishna, please clarify this doubt of mind. And this is leading us to the third verse, where Krishna is saying, the Blessed Lord said, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, in this world there is a twofold path, as I said before, O sinless one, the path of knowledge of the Shankyas and the path of action of the yogins. So Krishna is saying, no, I'm not confusing you. I'm not speaking in contradictions. I already said before in the second chapter, I said to you that there are two paths, two very clearly distinct paths to attain the same goal. One is called the path of action, one is called the path of knowledge. And how you know to which path you fit is by your qualifications, by your level, by the level of the purification of the mind. So he says the path of action is for the yogins, the karma yogis. We'll explain in a moment what we mean, but the path of knowledge is for the jnanis. Here he called them the Shankyas, but really they are the jnanis. They are, in the commentary it is mentioned, they are the enlightened one. Not fully enlightened, but their mind attains such high level of purification that their consciousness, their state of consciousness is a consciousness of unity and a consciousness of no non-agency. Non-agency meaning there is no ego there to say, I am doing. There is no such sense. Like right now, what am I doing? I'm sitting on this cushion, I'm speaking these words to this microphone, to these people. This is an ignorant perception. Because the I am, the I is not doing, is not sitting, is not speaking. The I is the silent witness, the Atman, the self, that is not engaged in any activities, just witnessing the activities of the body, of the mind. Because the I, the real I, is not the body and not the mind. So to be qualified for the path of knowledge, Krishna says, you need to have a mind that attain that level of purification and spiritual maturity, to not to place your I, your sense of I, on the body and the mind, and not to say I am speaking, I'm doing, I'm teaching. Because I'm not the doer of any of these activities, I'm also not the one who gets the credit, whether good or bad. So a karma yogi is someone who, well, let's talk about the jnani first. The jnani has no agency, no doership. And second thing, they have a consciousness of unity. So as they move about, they don't feel separation from others, from the world. They experience the oneness. And so on the other hand, the karma yoga, those who are not fit for jnana yoga, but they're qualified for karma yoga, they are the unenlightened. This is why Arjuna was advised by Krishna, was instructed by Krishna to do karma yoga, to be a karma yogi, to do his duty as a warrior, and to practice the sadhana of non-attachment, of offering everything to God. This is described very nicely in the third chapter. This is why it's such a beautiful chapter for all of us to study, because he gives here all the teachings about how we're born to this life, to this world with a duty, and each one has a duty depending on the karmic journey that we need to go through. Whether someone may need to be a yoga teacher, or a professor, or a doctor, or a healer, or a householder, or a swami, or whatever. It's all in our karma. And based on this, the scriptures are saying exactly what we should do. And the scriptures are also saying, if everyone is doing their duty selflessly, not for myself, but for God, for the whole, then we have a beautiful and harmonious society, or planet, or creation. Did you notice the nature? How the sun is doing its duty, giving heat and light to all, and the plants are doing their duty, they're growing and providing food for animals and human beings. And then the wind is blowing, the rain is coming, the animals, the trees, everyone is doing their duty. And it's a divine plan. It's a divine plan to have a, a beautiful, harmonious creation. The only type of being, the only species in this creation that is a bit unique in that sense are the human beings, because they have free choice to do their duty or not to do. This is what he's teaching him in here in the 3rd chapter. But he starts by explaining to Arjuna, don't be offended. I'm not prescribing to you a lesser path. Yes, it's true that I said before that the path of knowledge, jnana yoga, is the highest and is the direct means for moksha. But the karma yogi reaches the same place. Karma yoga is as good. It also takes you to moksha, only indirectly, in 2 steps. First step is the purification of the mind through selfless activity without attachment, while with bhakti, with love, with devotion, offering everything to God. And then when the mind is pure, knowledge dawns, and the karma yogi, through knowledge, attains the same place, attains moksha, or highest bliss. So the 3rd verse that we just read is an encouragement to Arjuna. Do not think that I'm prescribing to you a lesser path. This path of karma yoga, throughout the chapter, Krishna eulogizes to make it attractive for Arjuna to follow it. And it's a great lesson to all of us, because what are we, all of us here? We're karma yogis, right? We wake up in the morning and we try our best to do what we're supposed to do, to come to the satsang, to do yoga, pranayama, asana. Then whatever, if we're karma yogis, then we have some task to perform. But whatever if it is that we need to do, we are trying to tune to that divine will. Oh God, what is my duty? What is my calling? What is my mission, my vocation? And then do it selflessly and offer everything to God. So in the coming satsangs, we'll continue this topic and we'll see how to do it based on the teachings of Krishna. Om Tat Sat.